Hello. Thank you all for joining us again for another episode of the Black Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds podcast. I'm Nijiama Smalls, your host. And again, this podcast is dedicated to having the hard conversations so we can help Black women and girls heal and move them from crisis to excellence. I am so excited for our guest today. She is none other than Lady Dominique Haddon. She is the wife of the world renowned Deitrick Haddon and the First Lady of Hill City Church of Los Angeles. You may have seen her and her beautiful family on Preachers of LA. So she and I are just going to have an open and honest dialogue, First Lady to First Lady about all the things um, Black church and, things that are going on and are relevant right now to Black culture. So thank you, Dominique, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure, anytime, anytime. So let's just dive right into it. So, here lately, we have seen, over the past few decades, a decline in church attendance. People aren't going to church, and particularly in our community, people have stopped going to church. I was raised to go to church. I was in, my grandmother and grandparents, they were pastors and so on. So, church is a part of who I am. So,
Mhm.
but it's interesting now to see, we're in a world where people don't, they just don't go. They just don't value it as we
Right.
back in the day. What do you think are some of the reasons people have stopped going to church?
Um, I actually did some research on this because I was trying to figure it out for our church as well. Um, and what the research said is that especially for the black church, it has a lot to do with economics. So prioritizing work over church or rest over church. And I think that's a decline, but also the messaging that's coming from the pulpit and from the church. I know we've become more accepting of a lot of things, but as I've, be on social media, looking at those viral clips and different pastors and churches, a lot of people just want church to be more authentic versus this very religious, unforgiving space. And I think that's very important for churches to realize that you have to now reach not just grandma and great grandma, you got to go to auntie and uncles. In my generation, we're accepting our position as auntie and uncles as our parents are elevating to grandparents and great grandparents for some people. Just really taking spaces where or opportunities to reach that demographic because now they're bringing up the next generation. So I think it's very important for pastors, whether male or female, to really target that audience, be very intentional about what you're sharing and not just I would say bubblegum, but things that are cliche or catchy, but things that are really going to penetrate the heart as it pertains to their walk with Christ. Um, there's this new pastor. I don't say new pastor, but he's probably been doing it for years, but he's emerging. I want to say his name is Philip. Ooh, I'm saying his name wrong. I know it's Philip Anthony somebody.
Hmm.
Forgive me.
It's okay. I
but
never heard of him.
he's very viral on TikTok. And the way that he approaches ministry is very old school, I would say, but it's very new school at the same time. So a lot of us have gone to this space of self-help and self this and self that, but he's just doing raw things. Just like in your face is really you dealing with it and really taking the focus off the people and putting the focus back on God. So we become more going back to being Christ centered versus being us centered. So I think going back to what the question was, is really us, our messaging and making sure that we're reaching those and understanding where people are in their lives and not making them feel bad for being where they are.
Yes, absolutely. You said so much there because, especially the part about being Christ centered. Sometimes you do, go to certain churches or you tune into different pastors and, like you don't even see them open the Bible, right? Or there isn't a
Right.
mention of scripture, and you're like, well, what am I? What are we doing here?
Exactly.
And so it
Yeah.
is important because, you are trying to reach different ages and different demographics, right? And so the thing about it is the message is still consistent.
Right.
The word, the Bible is still very much relevant and it's still consistent. The bottom line is Jesus. At the end of the
Right.
day, the period, the dot, the everything is Jesus. And we got to
Jesus.
give them that hope. Aside from, we all know scriptures encourages us not to forsake the gathering of the saints and so
Right.
on. Aside from biblical mandate, what are some other benefits or reasons to go to church?
I always push community. There's a group of people who will love you unconditionally, who will become family. I know that's very prevalent in our church, that it's a family. That's what we push. Yes, we did come from the same mommy and daddy. However, we're cousin, sister, brother, whatever you need us to be, that's what we intend to be. So I think those are the benefits. I think finding spaces where, as you talked about, being safe. There's some things that you can't talk to your family about, but you can talk to the people in your church and know that it's in a safe space. I have a ministry called I Am Woman, which is the women's ministry at our church, excuse me, that and I'm over, and we've created that safe space for women who are not so confident, not so bold, not so sure, to be able to come into a space where we've developed them to be very confident, very bold, very sure about who they are and who God has called them to be. So that's the benefit of going to church. I'm sure there's spaces in the world, but there's not a place where you get both God and sisterhood. You don't always get that. There's some places where you get sisterhood, but you need, like, I'm missing something in that. I think in those spaces where you have those small groups or cell groups at churches where you can't get that in the world. So that benefit, and then just really in-house counseling. There's something you can get for free. You don't have to go to your therapy. You can get it right there. There's a word from God that's speaking directly to your situation, where there's nothing you have to. I want to say necessarily give to the preacher, but if you're in a space where the pastor's really tapped in, they'll speak to you. They'll target whatever you're saying, like, I didn't talk to them. Nobody in here knows me. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. They've, focused on some of the negativity that's coming from the church, but really missing the opportunity to gather with the saints. And I think those two things are beneficial for those who are missing out going to church. I need to come to church.
Come to church. Come to church, y'all. I completely agree. You get community and you have people that can pray with you and for you. And one of the
Yeah.
things I gained from going to church, um, growing up in my family, we didn't have a whole lot of strong, solid marriages, right?
Mm.
There's a lot of dysfunction and unhealthy marriages and so on in my family, and a lot of single
Yeah.
moms and so on and so forth. My mom was a single mom for some time. And so I watched some of the leaders in our church. I watched them and their families to
Mm.
understand what my role should be as a wife and, how
Right.
to have a loving marriage, because if it hasn't been modeled before you, you really don't know what to do.
Right.
So that's another benefit um, of coming to church. Now, I know you may have heard this. I've heard this a lot, and it gets on my nerves. But people will say, the church takes money. They're always
Mm.
asking for money, all of that kind of stuff. And our church, we've actually had to change the way we um do the request for tithes and
Offer.
offering. Like we would say,
Mm.
if you're not feeling it, don't give. We're not trying to force it. Just to kind of alleviate all of that. What? But I feel like people don't. People will say that, and then I will say, well, have you asked a church leader what they're doing with the money? So share some
Right.
of the wonderful things that Hill City is doing in the community.
So we're the same way. When you said we trying to try to skate around asking people for money, because I'm very, very sensitive to that. That is just something I want to make sure that I'm aware of when we're asking people, because people got their own bills. They don't have to give. They come into your church. nevertheless, the things that we do in our church is we do a lot of free things. So, like right now in the month of December, we're giving away hot chocolate every Sunday, sweet treats, things where people could, incentives to come to church. But also, we do in the community, we're preparing to give out food every Sunday. Every Sunday. So we're working with the city right now because we moved locations recently to now distribute that to the community. Our community is Latino dominated,
Mhm.
and we're a Black church, so it's like really trying to reach that community. But also, we just did a cancer event where it was for the community, where they could come out and give free information about being aware of the signs of cancer, the different types of cancers, and things like that. So we use our facility, not just for Sunday morning worship or different events, to benefit the community as well. And in 2025, as we're preparing, we're having a marketplace. We have different events that are coming up that are going to benefit solely that community, because it is in a low income area. And we have to target to make sure that they know that the church is not there for money, but the church is there with their donations to help the community. So the more you pour in, the more we can do. If you don't give it, we don't have it. That's it. And a lot of the responsibilities, if the people don't give, falls on the pastor. They don't tell you that. There's things
Exactly.
that we've had to downsize in our living spaces to be able to accommodate the needs of the ministry. That's not talked about often, because people think, like you said, it goes to us. No, I wish a lot of that money went to us. How much money you put into that ministry, but it doesn't. My husband, um, as a gospel artist, he gets his money from outside of the church. He does not get a salary. There's no salary to give. All the money goes specifically to Hill City Church, and sometimes members need help. You have to now use some of that money to help the members because they mismanaged the money, and now you have to dig into that and say, okay, this is what we can offer based on what we have, based on X, Y, and Z. So I think a lot of people have it wrong. Now, I'm not going to say there are preachers who do take money. And what can we do about that? That's between them and God. But then as a member, you have to say, if they're taking the money, we don't see improvements to the church and things like that. Now I have to now change my membership or go to that pastor directly. But I don't think it should be across the board like this broad, a stroke of this is what all ministries are. It's not like that. There are a lot of amazing ministries, excuse me, that are actually helping in their community and the community within their church building. So,
So true, so true. And the thing is, people will see all of that. It could be right in front of their faces. Like they could have come to the church and gotten, funds for the church to help in their distress and so on. Or,
right.
they could participated in some of the free events. And they'll still say, well, the church takes your
Mm.
money. And I'm like, you of all people should know that
Right.
that's not how it goes. And the thing about it is, I don't think people truly understand what a pastor, and especially his family, goes through.
Right.
Just even, with my husband, I'm sure it's the same with Pastor Deitrick. Like sometimes they can be so overwhelmed from all of the burdens that people are
Right.
going through because, they come to the pastor and, this is going on, pastor, this is going on and that going on
Right.
and I'm losing that and that's and it can be so heavy sometimes, right? And I'll see my
Absolutely.
husband, like, and he's not an emotionally driven person, but I'll see him in his office like in tears sometimes just because
Mm.
it becomes so heavy, right? And then as
Right.
the first lady, I'm sure they come to you with all the different things and then you have to kind
Hmm.
of, you taking this on and we want to help everybody and you can't help everybody, and so that is just I wish people really understood what um the pastor and the first family really, goes through. Then I don't think, some of these questions would come
Mm.
up, right?
Right.
And that's what I liked about the Preachers of LA is that, it kind of gave a glimpse of, what a pastor's life is actually like. You know what I mean? It's not all
Oh, yeah.
glitzy and glamorous as, you know, we paint it out to be because
Right.
maybe a couple of pastors have given that illusion, in the past that
Right.
it is all glitzy and glamorous. And like you said, it's sacrifice. It's straight up financial sacrifice, it's sacrifice of your time,
Right.
as families, we could be having dinner with our spouses and then the phone calls or whatever. Let me ask you this, how have you carved out boundaries in your home in
Mm,
regards to
that's
that?
good. Um, for me, boundaries are really hard
I get
in
that.
my
It's
in my household because and with church because I'm so involved and um if I say no, it's like the end of the world for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So, for me, the balance I do give myself is like Fridays is like my me time and I focus on things that I want to do, things that are pertaining to my vision, God's vision for me. I focus on those things, and also I put something on my phone. It's a if you have an iPhone, it's just like this a focus. And at 8:30, I get no more text messages, no phone calls, no emails, no nothing until the morning. So I don't really allow people to contact me past a certain time. That is a boundary I've set, because I would text all night long if I had to. Um, uh, I put a focus on my husband's phone as well. So past 9 o'clock, can't contact him. So, but
can't
he's
contact
very
Pastor Deitrick
yeah.
after 9 p.m.
No, no, ma'am, no, sir. So I think that's kind of the way that we do it. But we also want to remain sensitive because there are emergencies that happen. Um, and we want to be aware of those things as well. But just really, like you said, just really carving out that time is been a little bit difficult for us because our church is still, even though it's 8 years old, it's still growing. So you want to be there and you have a lot of sensitive people in the church.
Yes. One missed
Ugh.
phone call, and they'll be
I'm
ready to
leaving
write
your
you.
church.
Yes, yes. Exactly.
So, yeah,
Exactly.
so
I get that.
so
And that's
church
something we're
yeah.
working on too is trying to have better boundaries. I like that putting, doing the focus time, the D and D and all of that. That's something I may steal from you. Were you about to
Yes.
add something else?
No, just making sure I think because people will abuse the freedoms that you give to them to call and text you. I have a Google number and I got my real number. And the people I really don't know, you get that Google number. The people I trust that you want to abuse it, you get my real number. And I think just really um allowing them to know that it's a privilege to have my phone number, and I'm not saying it in a way where it's arrogance and, oh, it's an honor to know me. It's just really for a lot of people. I don't really like to talk to a lot of people. I like to stay low key and like to keep peace, even on my cell phone, my telephone, just in my space where I don't, my personal information and things like that. I think that's very important for people to honor and respect your leaders. And if they give you access to them, not saying that they're above and, great and grand, all those things, but if they allow you to be in their personal space, that you honor that. You respect whatever boundaries or things that they've given you and not abuse it. Because I think that's very important where people get too comfortable with their leaders and now there's a level of disrespect. So setting certain boundaries are very important. And when it comes to respect and disrespect, I've set that boundary very clear. You disrespect me one time, I'm done with you, meaning as it pertains to our personal relationship. Now, I'm gonna always be your first lady as long as you're here at this church. But as far as you having a personal relationship with me, I can't do that.
I love that. I love that. I love that, Lady Dominique, because you are prioritizing your peace.
Yes.
And see, you have to be emotionally well. So if you allow, I really want y'all listening to understand why she's saying that, because if we allow people to destroy our peace, then we could end up bleeding on someone else when they really
Yes.
need us because we're not whole. So please understand when we're talking about these boundaries and how and these safeguards that we have. It's not because we're trying to keep people out, right? It's so that we can stay aligned and
Right.
in tune with God so we can constantly hear from God and that we can be the best version of ourselves when people really need us, right? Because as and I'm listening to you and I'm getting some tips because I give everybody has my number, everybody calls me,
Mm-mm.
whatever the case is, and now I'm like,
No.
wait a minute now, I may need to reel things back in and so on. And like you said, it's an honor to be able to be invited in someone's space like that. And, and you want to make sure that people understand that you're human too. And not, I
Yes.
think sometimes people think that the pastor and his family, they're just machines that they can just
Right.
tap into and just burn out at any given time. No, I need rest. I need
Yes.
time to eat. I have children. I have a family. I need time to pour into them. And they need me to be present and emotionally available for them. And I can't if I'm always pulled in so many different directions. So,
Yes.
no, I appreciate that. And I'm learning from you too as we're sitting here chit-chatting. So let's
Mm-mm,
move.
don't give them people your number. Don't give them people your number.
I'm I'm listen. I'm reeling that in. A Google number. As soon as we get off of here, I'm getting a Google number. Yes. So let's talk about church and social justice.
Mm.
We have a question from someone that I dropped in my we have a private social Facebook group for black women, and I mentioned, I didn't say who it was, but I have a first lady coming on, and I wanted to um get some questions from the audience. And one person asked, "What race do you think Jesus is, and does it even matter?"
Well, I think if you're going to be, a lot of people don't know that I'm a educator by trade. I got a whole degree in it, and information, accurate information, is very important. And if we look at the Bible more than just a religious book, but a history book, will be more, excuse me, accurate about who he is and who he is not. I know that in the Western part of the world, meaning America, we've made him a Caucasian man with a nice bust down in the middle, finger wave, curly hair, blue eyes, green eyes, or whatever. And he is not a white man. Does race matter when it comes to uh, being accurate? Absolutely. When it comes to your faith, not at all. I don't care if he's blue, black, pink, whatever. But when it comes to putting out information, it's very important that we know what Jesus or what his race was. And for most people, he's in Bethlehem. He's born in Bethlehem, and he is of African descent. We go on in the map. I know they make Africa look small, but Africa is a great big continent, and he is of African descent. And even though he is Jewish, he is of African descent. So I think it's very important for us to be accurate as it pertains to that information. And I think it does not do a disservice because we all derive from Africa. All walks of life come from Africa. We don't like to acknowledge that. All of us, white, blue, pink, purple, whatever it is, all comes from there. Life comes from there. But I think it's very important for us, yes, to know that, to be aware. So when we give out information, it's it's important. It's accurate. It's not some false thing that we made up to make him to be superior. Because if we go back to what's here in America, a lot of our what we believed about Jesus is not accurate. They've used the Bible to enslave the Africans, that came here, that were shipped here, sold here for their own benefit, to keep them in their place, to penalize them, to make them feel inferior. That's why there is a white Jesus, is to let you know that the white race is more superior than any other race here in the world. So it's very important for us to definitely say who Jesus is as pertains to history. You can believe he's black, blue, purple, whatever it is as pertains to your faith. That's your business. But when we're sharing who Jesus is, if people ask questions, then you could be able, oh, was Jesus black? Was he this? Was he that? And you could be like, no, he's not. Yes, he is. So I think that's very important. I think people get tied up in those little things to kind of get you caught up in those things to twist or to um it's almost like how they would do Jesus when they were asking those things, and he'll talk to them back in parables, and they'd be like, "What?" If you try to catch him up, and he'd be like, "No, no, no, no. This is what it is. I'm clear. I know what you're trying to do." But I think it's really to keep a certain race or ethnicity group in power, and to diminish and reduce everybody else to be beneath them. So I think it's very important to know that who Jesus is and who he is not.
Absolutely,
So thank you for that
absolutely.
question.
Yes, yes, and because it helps us to dismantle the racism when we get a full understanding of who Jesus is. And I know Jesus, listen, I know he has black in him because he sometimes he'll talk to me, he'll be like, now listen, sis.
Yes.
Now you know you're wrong. So
He'll get you all the way together.
all the
Yes.
way together. He be gathering me. So I grew up. I don't know about you, but I grew up in the evangelical movement and so on.
Mm,
And I'm gonna be real with you. I've just become what's the word I'm looking grieved. I'm gonna say grieved at a lot of things that I see going on in the evangelical church movement. I've been hurt
mm.
really by it, and it's starting to appear that there's a lot of Christian nationalism. And I saw on your IG, you were speaking out, and I was like, this sister right here gets it, right? Um, and I think it's so important for us to, we got to be accountable as a church. We got to be
Right.
accountable to ourselves first, and then,
Absolutely.
be able to admit where we've gone wrong. So how do you believe that Christian nationalism is harmful to us?
My kids go to a private school, and
Mhm.
it is a Christian school. And if you know the history of private Christian schools, it is based in in the evangelical movement, and they pledge allegiance to the flag, to the Bible, and to the Christian flag. It's a bit much. You go to a black church. I went to Christian school. It was a black Christian school. I think we maybe said the Pledge of Allegiance, but that was not something we did a lot. So I think when it comes to that movement, I think it's always been there, but it's been more subtle and not in your face. You have to be, I think, real up close with it. And I think it's done a disservice to those who are not believers because it now puts us all in this one group. It was like, no, no, we all don't believe like that. Um, and you have a lot of people in the black community who follow these prominent leaders um, who have no offense to anybody that is a Trump supporter. No, no offense. But this person, and this has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with being Republican, nothing like that. It has everything to do with them rallying behind this particular candidate who has not demonstrated anything of Christ-like ideals, beliefs, anything. None of that. I mean, he's selling the Bible with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights in it. I've seen some evangelical pastors speak against it, which is amazing. But then I've seen some who are rallying behind him for him to be this grifter. I mean, he just this whole being, and for them to stand behind him speaks a lot about where their values are and how it's really based on, like I said previous, them being in power, having someone who is white that will continue to be in power has nothing to do with religion if we're really being honest about it. And with white or Christian nationalism has, even though it says Christian, is really white nationalism. If we putting it out there, being frank about it, you got to call it what it is. It's really not based in Bible. That's why that post said is white Christian nationalism in Bible drag. You're using that to cover up what it really is. And we got to be careful to call it out when we see it and not be afraid of the repercussions. I've had people come into my inbox upset. I was gonna say something. I don't want to make sure I don't say the wrong thing. But upset about what I am posting and putting the truth out there so people can be aware. Although the election did not come out, and it really hurt my grieved my spirit when it came.
Same,
I was like, are we here? Like we don't want better.
same.
So I think with what is going on now, I think we're in a space where people want what they want. They don't care about other people. And that particular group feel that they are right. I with my kids' school, I was like, a lot of this stuff is strange. It's good. I'm getting there so they can have the word of God. They got it already in them, but it's the behavior that I see at the school is, even though they're learning Bible all day long, every day of the week, they do chapel once a week. Those kids are still bad. They still racist. They're still racist. My daughter was called a monkey at school. I know. I know. She said one of her other classmates was called the N word, and and the other classmate who was black said, "Oh, they call me monkey all the time." So it's really, I know, it's really, even though there's, like I said, Bible and things like that, the things that are practicing behind closed door after they leave church is still racism. It's still sexism. They had oldest daughter had a situation where all the boys were coming to school and telling girls, "You better make my sandwich. You better do this. You better do the." Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of that. And even at a young age, my kids are seventh grade, fifth grade, and fourth grade. A lot of that going on. So it's already ingrained in them very early. So to see its demise is going to take a while because it's going to be generations to
Mm.
come to get rid of that. So it's really taught, it's ingrained in their everyday life.
That's so unfortunate. That's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
And, where I live, my kids go to public school, and we live in a predominantly white,
Mm.
area and neighborhood. And you move to these areas because, you see the test scores and so on and so forth, right?
Mhm.
And when you get
Mhm.
there and you're like, okay, it's predominantly white, right? And then, you don't understand sometimes. I know for us, I feel like we should have looked more thoroughly into it before we
Mm.
moved here, because my son is 5th grade. He's at a school where there's all white teachers, all white women teachers.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
they had an assistant principal who was a black man, which I love, but he's now left, and it's all white women. One white
Mm.
male teacher is there. And so that comes, there's a lot that comes with that, right? And I'm not trying to knock or say anything against white women, but I'm just saying that you don't gain the benefit of diverse perspectives when you're
Right.
just faced with all one thing. And we've had a lot of that even up until, last week. I've served on PTO and advisory council, and people will call me, parents, and they'll say, a parent called me the other day and said her child was called the N word. And we've had that, when my child, I had to go to the middle school and so on and so forth because of things like that. And I think a couple of things are happening. I think number one, people are having healthy conversations about race in their homes. I
Mhm.
think white America has become extremely fragile, and I think they've become extremely tone deaf to believing that racism
Absolutely.
doesn't exist, and that they're afraid to have these conversations about um, race in their families. And I'll say it once and I'll say it again. If you are not having conversations about race with your child, and pardon my French, Lord forgive me, but there's a potential to raise a shitty human being. And I'm just going to say it
Yes.
like that, because if your child can stand in my black child's face or your black child's face and call them the N word, that is a shitty human being all day long, period, point.
All day.
and because you don't know how that is traumatizing that child. It's not just you calling them weird or whatever the case is. You are attacking something that they can't change about themselves. That many
Right.
people have died. People have died by that words. They've been hung. Families have been ripped apart by that word. And so for your child to stand in my child's face and say that, that is extremely problematic to me. But it's because we've
Right.
become afraid to have these conversations. And also with the evangelical church, politics has been in our churches for years. Martin Luther
Right.
King, that is
Mhm.
one way he mobilized us is through our churches, right? Um,
Right.
and it's been the same on the other end with our white counterparts, right? The Klan would
Mhm.
come to church and they would say
Sure
those
would.
those that were against school integration, they would say this is God wants doesn't want us to be integrated. They would cherry pick parts of the Bible, take it out of context and say this is
Right.
why we shouldn't integrate our schools and our culture and so on and so forth. So we're still seeing um some of that to this day. And I find myself like you when,
Absolutely.
when people know I'm a believer, I find myself always saying, not that kind, we're the kind that love everybody,
Yes.
because you don't want people to think that you are some hate filled, you know, person, right? But you have to
Right.
say that because there's so much harm that has come out of this Christian nationalism movement. So if you are a part of that, I'm really hoping that you listen to us and
Yeah.
reconsider because the God that we serve, he is a God of love. He is a
Yeah.
God of forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
He's a God of second and third chances. He's gentle. He is kind. He is not all this other stuff. He doesn't force things, down our throats and so on. So we hope that you really, reconsider that. Um, as I mentioned, there's a lot of people who have suffered church hurt and church trauma, right?
Mm.
And I'm
Oh,
very
yeah.
big on all of our spaces being emotionally safe for Black women and girls. How do you think we can make our churches safe, emotional spaces for Black women and girls?
Like I mentioned before, I have a women's ministry called I Am Woman, and it's basically saying God's woman. And we've created that space specifically for um, like I said, women who are not sure, not confident, not bold. And we've developed them into those strong women by having healthy conversations, using the word of God, but not focusing so much on the religious part of it. We've had people cuss and say all kind of stuff on there, but it's a safe space. It's for them to be able to share their heart, their grievances, things that they've gone through, and then have a sisterhood speak life back into them. And I think those spaces are very, very important. We talk about things that probably most church groups that are not progressive speak on. We talk about betrayal. We talk about infidelity. We talk about homelessness. Different mistakes that we've made. All kinds of things. Sorry, all kinds of things. But I think that space allows them to grow, allows them to know that they're not alone, because oftentimes you feel alone. You don't feel like somebody's going through the same thing. You'll hear one woman unmute and say, I was going through the same thing this week, or, I've gone through this. Let me show you how I've got through this. So, me as a facilitator, I don't always talk, but I give them, I lay the parameters of them of how they can speak. Like there's no wrong or right answer. It's whatever you're feeling, whatever that is. So I think creating those spaces allows women to become more bold and more confident and more sure about who they are in spite of what they've gone through, in spite of what's going on. When it comes to church hurt, however, um, I think in our church, we have not created a space to necessarily deal with that because a lot of people have used that as a form of, I don't want to say like a weapon, but like a weapon um, to, what's the word I want to use? to not take accountability for their actions. You've
Exactly.
we
Yes.
we've s- we've seen it. Me and my husband, we be sitting there like, I said, let me go ahead and go over this again. So you're saying that, okay, and that we've hurt you. I was like, no, that's called correction. Your
Exactly.
actions, your actions are not, it's not okay. So it's not that I'm trying to hurt you. I want to, this is, it may sound like I'm trying to damage you, but I'm really trying to help you. And maybe, yes, maybe there may be a better way to say it, but in this moment, this is what I need to tell you. I can share that there's a moment where me and my husband had to have this conversation. This couple pulled us and said, we want to have a conversation. People always have an issue with me. They don't really have too much of an issue with the pastor. But, I had to have a conversation with them about, well, you don't speak to me, First Lady. You stopped talking to me. You pulled away. And I said, you know what? Yeah, I did. And I said it's because the way that I know that I can discern that you're handling me. She said, well, what you mean? I said, just how you handling me and how you handle this ministry. And I told them I was going to sit on it. I was just listening to the whole conversation. I wasn't going to say anything. And I told them, I said, stop manipulating this ministry with your gift. And they were pissed. They was like, oh, we're not doing that. I said, oh yeah, that's what the Lord told me. Said he pressed it on my heart to keep saying. I said, I wasn't gonna say it because I don't want to stir the pot because I speak, directly to you. I'm not gonna skate around it. I may be quiet about it, but I'm gonna be direct with you about it. And I think people take correction as church hurt when it's not church hurt. It's really you're out of order. And you can't be tamed. So you're like a wild, wild donkey somewhere. You need to go on somewhere where you can be free and gallop in the tulips and do whatever you need to do with no restriction, no boundaries. But when you're operating within a space or a system, you have to play by those quote unquote rules. And in the house of God, there's order. If there's not order, then where is God? So I think a lot of people have to get out of their feelings, out of their, put ego and pride aside and really deal with you. What are you doing? Now, I'm not saying every situation that the pastor is there's not church hurt. I've experienced church hurt myself. I'd be like, ooh, but you know what I did? Told my pastor, who was happened to be my grandfather, like, you know what? That's not right. You shouldn't have done that. It's you can't treat me differently because I'm your granddaughter, be harder on me than you are on those other people because you want to keep them. You have to treat me the same way. So there's things that you can have a conversation when you're mature and you say, First Lady, I think you could have talked to me a little bit better. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. Just be passionate. But I think a lot of people will rather go away saying that the church hurt me than to say, this is what have that tough conversation, but also take responsibility as well.
Exactly. I completely agree with you 100% on that. And I noticed, it's so much you said in there. Number one thing I heard was mature. And when you are mature, you can go to that person and you can say, this thing hurt me. I'm big on that. You
Mhm.
cannot be close to me if I don't have the space to say to you, you hurt me. Let's talk
Right.
about it. And vice versa. Now, if you can go to everybody else, because that's
Mhm.
what folks like to do. They'll go to
Mhm.
everybody else and say, Lady Najma did this, Lady Dominique did this, and you're the
Mhm.
last person to know. You know, why couldn't you come to me? You used all that energy to go into them. Why couldn't you come to me and we have a conversation about it? And then that's another thing. Like to me, it's like, well, what are you a part of this church for if we can't correct you? You know what I mean? If you claim us as your pastor, if you claim us as your spiritual father, spiritual big brother, spiritual mother, spiritual big sister, whatever it is, spiritual auntie, spiritual whatever it is, but we
Mhm.
can't say anything to you, then the relationship is kind of one-sided. And like you said, you're a wild donkey. You just want us to let you run around and do whatever you want to do. Is that what this is?
Right.
So be open to correction, y'all, and know it's coming from love. And especially like, you're hearing Lady Dominique, like she doesn't have oodles and oodles of time on her hand. Just she's just sitting
Right.
twiddling. She's got 3 kids, she's got a husband, she's got a church, she's all these things that she's doing. If she takes the time to come to you and talk to you, if she's making that time out of her day, sacrificing her time when she could be doing 100 other things, that's love. That's care.
Right.
Okay. And treat it as such. Take it. And it may hurt. It may touch you a little bit, but that's okay. That lets us know that what she's saying is important. And
Right.
take it as such, process it and move on, but come back stronger because this is growth. How you
Yeah.
handle correction shows how spiritually mature you are, right? And so for those of us who have been the ones that folks have come and told them, gossiped on the pastor and his wife. Think about that. Like if they come into you gossiping, that's a sign that they're not mature. Or if they're ready to leave the
Mhm.
church because the pastor and his wife didn't speak to them, the pastor and his wife didn't, acknowledge them or whatever it is. That's your sign of maturity, right?
Right.
And so and so have that conversation with them and say, "Hey, why don't you have that? Talk to them about that. I can't help you."
I find it interesting that they can talk to you about they can't talk to you about that, but it's you're easily approachable when they need something from you.
Exactly, 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 100%. Y'all, please keep that in mind. Please keep that in mind. How do you feel about the title First Lady? Because I'm gonna be honest, that's what people at my church they know. I'll be like, oh, I'm just Naj, you know.
Yes, same way.
And people they'll still call me first. So now I'm at this point of just okay, I'm your first lady. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that title?
I hate it so much. It I was at, my husband had a concert in Detroit, and everybody was like, "First lady." I was like, "I'm not y'all first lady." It's like, "Oh, out here, you gotta" people be concerned about titles, and I was like, "I'm Dominique today." I said, "I'm not ministering, I'm not giving orders like that, I'm just the wife, so
Mhm.
it's just Dominique." It's like, "Okay, Dominique." I said, "Yeah." There was just random people calling me first. I was like, "No." I said, "It's Dominique." I don't. So I don't really like the title. I think people feel like because I don't like the title, I don't feel like uh, I can do whatever I want to do. But I think First Lady limits you in so many ways when it comes to that title. Um, like people can't believe you married to a pastor and you talk like that and you handle people and I was like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't go out, disrespecting people, but I have thoughts and opinions too. I'm not restricted to just these things, the things of the Bible, even though people feel like you should have a voice about what's going on in the world and being in spaces. I've been in spaces where I've been on the shade room talking to people. I've been on the shade room for
Mhm.
my actions. But I've been in there
I
where
ain't know
I
that,
prayed
Lady
for somebody.
Dominique.
I know. I know.
Girl, I might be
It's the
next.
it was the pastor's 50th birthday party, and we was
Oh,
people
I
said I was
remember
twerking that
that.
out. Yeah,
I remember that. I remember that.
I
I do
wasn't.
remember that.
I
I
really
loved
was.
it.
I wasn't twerking. I was just, it's a party. We dancing. We're not gonna be over there, playing tambourines and stuff. This ain't a church service, so it's a party. So, but just me, I was on the shade room talking, or somebody, I want to say a celebrity, fell on hard times, and I saw people in the comments laughing and joking, and it was on my heart to just pray for him. And then I want to say two or three people say, "Can you pray for me?" So even though we're in spaces where people feel like we should not be, I think those are the places we need to be. I'm, yes, called to, with my husband, a particular group of people, but I think everybody needs Jesus and everybody needs to have an encounter with him wherever you are. So if my title only limits me to the people I pastor, then that's not, I don't think that's good. Like, I think if I'm a first lady, or I'm a woman of God, I should be able to minister up under that title, not with restrictions, to whomever God seems deems fit for that particular ministry, whatever that is. If I need to pray for you, need to speak into your life, I need to say those things. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to stop doing it. And I'm not going to allow a title to restrict me from speaking to certain people, going to different places that God says yes and okay to. I don't believe that I need to be everywhere, but I believe that there are certain spaces that God wants first ladies, pastors, deacons, elders, prophets to infiltrate, for his presence to be there, not for us to get drenched or covered in whatever's going on in the world, for us to be that light to those people. You'll be surprised at how many celebrities need somebody. You need a Nathan like
Mhm.
King David had to be able to tell you, okay, you out of order. Even though I know you're the king or you're this, you got to have somebody in that space that is not afraid to speak life into you, and also who can be able to give you a word from God that is directly suited for you. So I think having the title First Lady is cool. I'll take it. But I think I want to also redefine what a first lady, a modern first lady, looks like. I'm not your church mother. I grew up in church my whole life. My grandmother was a first lady. My mother was a first lady. So I've seen it. But I feel like they suffered so much in silence at um, the sacrifice of their freedom, their voices. My grandmother, I hate to say it, it was probably more powerful than my grandfather when it
Right.
came
Wow.
to her when she spoke. It was just like,
Mm.
yeah, my mother as well. My father was a dynamic preacher, but I felt my mother had this extra in her.
Mhm.
But because of the title, it restricted her. It limited her reach and her appeal to this small group of people. And I think that does such a disservice to the body of Christ.
Exactly, exactly. First ladies with voices, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm like you, I like to have a good time, you know. I might you might see me twerking on Pastor Shimon or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
So yes. Absolutely. Listen. And you're right. So many people suffered in silence and you couldn't be who you wanted to be. And I think that title is very limited. But I understand that for some, it's their way of like respecting us and honoring us and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So I've stopped shunning it as much as I used to and just try to embrace it as best I can,
Right.
you know. Yeah, absolutely. You had a post about disrespecting
Mm.
pastors' wives, and you was like, "That's not gonna happen on my watch." What are some ways people disrespect the pastor's wife?
Ooh, let me see. Let me list them off. I think for me, I'm just gonna say my personal experience with that is thinking you can have a relationship with him and not one with me.
Mm,
That's number one. Um, uh, I've had people disrespect me where they've, like I said, gone off on me. I'd be like, "Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, sir." Yeah. Um, So they feel like I said, and then they think that they can continue to have a conversation. I think not acknowledging the first lady, the pastor's wife, whatever title she wants to fall up under, acting like she's not there, she doesn't exist. Um, I've seen people dismiss the first lady, like, "Oh, that's just first lady,"
mhm.
and and don't realize that she's probably the catalyst to why this ministry is still going. Because I'm sure the pastor's probably quit 10 times,
Mhm,
and she
burnt
said,
all
"Oh,
the
you
way
gotta
out.
finish." Yeah. So I think a lot of people feel like the first lady is, or the pastor wife is, this made up title, of course, and that she has no significance, she has no purpose. She's just there to be there, which is crazy. I've recently been I'm an executive pastor at our church as well.
Oh,
So I've recently I know I don't want to do that either. I just want to I just want to be in the background. I just want to be a member of the church, but executive pastor there. So I'm over all the ministries, and I pretty much well, our one particular ministry, we had an individual. It was shared that she may have said something to one of the children, and they went back to their parent, and I had to correct that matter in the public first, which means I had to send an email to let everybody know there was something said, da da da. Then this individual, she was in the email as well, um, got upset and went off on me and said I mistreated her and all these other stuff. And I was just like, I've never mistreated you. I said, that's a lie. That's a lie. I've never mistreated you. I said, but I had to correct whatever it is. We have to have that conversation when the conversation is, we've already set that up for you. I mean, mad disrespectful. I just seen her recently at a concert and I said, hey, how you doing? And she just kind of looked at me like, hey. I was like, all right.
Like,
Okay.
okay, now I
The
know what
last
he's saying.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your last time. So just remember what you did because I'm remember for sure. So I just think people don't realize that we go home with the pastor and we debrief with the pastor and we tell the pastor everything that somebody has done, said, or what we saw, what they overlooked, all those things. And they seem to forget that even though he is the pastor, you still his wife. He's still your husband and you're
Hmm.
still his wife. And at the end of the day, if he's a good man, he's not going to let anybody disrespect his wife.
Exactly.
I don't care if he's still, yes, he's going to play pastor to you, but he's going to make sure that you know that's my wife. My
Hmm.
husband does it often. He said this church exists because of first lady. This church still going. It flows. It functions because of her. She keeps it rolling. When I'm doing other things, she's the one that is taking care of business. When it's time to pay rent, mortgage, the bills, she's the one that's doing it. So you got to honor and respect her at
Yeah.
the least, at the bare minimum. So I think that's where the frustration came from for me when I made that post is that people get beside themselves. Like you can love, like you said earlier, love people through a lot of things, but when it's time to correct them, you can forget everything. But I just don't think those people didn't like you in the first place. They just had to deal with you because they married. You married to the pastor.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you on that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
How can people support and show up for their pastor's wife or first lady?
For me, it's just helping. I think people don't realize how much help first ladies need, especially if they're very active. I don't sit down and
Mhm.
wear a hat and things like that. I'm very active in ministry. So just however you can lend your gift, not make it difficult, just be easy going. Um, uh, to me be take the initiative. I love that. People just I got a plan. This okay to do? I'm like, absolutely. Da 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 da. We got it clear. Get to it. I love people like that. And I think people who actually pray for their first ladies,
Yes,
who actually
absolutely.
love, pour into them is very, very important because it's a very lonely position to have. A lot
100%.
of people
Yes.
people covet it, but it's terrible. I'm like, you do not want it
You
because
don't
you
want
can't
this
really.
life.
Yes. If I could cuss out every single person that has disrespected me, I would. But you can't. You have to have a lot of self-control, self-discipline to be able to smile through a lot of tough stuff, especially people disrespecting your husband too. So,
Mhm.
so it's just I think love on her, love on the pastor, make it easy for them. Don't be difficult. Um, if you can solve a problem on your own without it disrupting what's going on, do that. Don't bring everything to us. If it's something that you know is detrimental, absolutely, but something that you can solve within your space and your parameter
Mhm.
with your authority, do that. So, and don't run people out the church. That you can do that too.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Yes. Pray for us. Pray for us before you gossip about us. And that's the
Yes,
thing. When somebody comes to you gossiping about she did that, she said that. Did you pray for it? That's what you ask. Did you pray for her first before you coming to me
right.
with all that? Did you talk to her?
Yes,
Yes, don't, be as helpful as you can. I used to say when my kids are younger, y'all come get these kids. That's what you can do. But give me and Pastor a date night.
yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my final couple of questions for you. Um, I want to talk about you and Pastor Deitrick because y'all have a fun-filled, loving marriage. Preachers of LA. He's the doting husband, and so on. So how do y'all keep the fun, the flames going? Like, what's y'all secret sauce to the Haddon
I'm the
house?
I'm the secret sauce.
Yes, I love it.
Dietrich is very, let me say this, okay, because he was married before and he didn't have kids prior to that. However, he was solely focused on ministry, just ministry, church, his career, things like that. When he got with me, I created balance for him. Then when we had our kids, it was like, okay, I have to now shift from just being an artist to now being a husband and a dad. So now, and a pastor too, add that on there, but just within our household, just really focusing on family and being family focused. So I was like, we have a lot of arguments and disagreements on those things, on how to balance our life when it comes to that. So we take a lot of trips. We like to vacation. We haven't had a date night. My kids are like, y'all need a date night because like we tired of y'all. You like y'all tired of us. We don't y'all need a date night. So we do day dates. So if we cannot do date nights, we do breakfast every morning with each other. We talk, we debrief, we deal with whatever we got to deal with when it comes to church, and then the personal things as well. So I think really having a line of communication, and then creating spaces where you get to enjoy one another. It could be, sexual, or it can be, things that are not sexual, to really build on that relationship. And that's what we've done. Just really um had just like a line of a communication. It wasn't always like that, but just really sharing what we need from each other, and having moments, that allows us to share our personalities with each other, and also with the world. Like, we like to party, we like to have fun. uh he's not as adventurous as I am. He's very cautious. I don't know where he gets that from, but I'm very like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. You're like, Dominique, da, da, da. I'm like, listen, I know you're 50 and I'm, 39 going on 40, but just, it makes having a younger spouse as well, allows you to explore things that you probably wouldn't at an older age, and just keeps you young and fun and, relevant to some capacity. But that's how we keep it. Keep the fire burning.
So Pastor Shaman and I, we are opposite in that regard, in that he is the
Mm,
adventurous one. He wants
really?
to hike in Lima, Peru, Machu Picchu, whatever. I could care less about that. He's the one that will jump out of the helicopters and all of that type of stuff. I'm just like, nah. God meant for me to stay on ground until he calls me home. Okay. So
Yes.
we're opposite in that regard, but we like to have a good time.
Yeah.
We like to, we like to go out and all of the kind of things and so on. So, just to keep it spicy. But it's hard. It's not always easy because there are so many different things that are competing. And I know for me, I don't know about you, but mommy guilt gets the best of me, especially now with
Mm.
my daughter. She's in middle school now, and I feel like time is slipping away. So like every minute I'm like in her face, like, what are you doing? Do you want to do this? You want to watch a movie? You want to go here? You want to go there? Should we do that? And she's just like, Mom, what's up? But I'm just trying to make sure that she knows I'm present, right?
Right.
That is my biggest thing. That is my biggest ministry now, is just making sure that she knows I'm present. But
Right.
then at the same time, you get so involved in that you know you forget, "Oh, I got a whole spouse over here that I gotta take care of," and so on. And so sometimes, in that same vein, when I'm talking to my husband, I don't know if you and Dietrich do this, but I'll say, now I need to talk to Pastor Shaman now. Or I'll say, I don't need Pastor Shaman, I just need you, you know,
Hmm.
to switch gears to get him in the right mindset of, how we need to converse and so on. So yes, and I love the video of y'all twerking. Honey, twerk on. Because we're still human. We're still
Yes.
human. And just because we're in the body of Christ doesn't mean we can't have a good time. Doesn't mean we
Yes.
can't love on our husbands,
Right.
and so on and so forth. I want to see my pastor and his wife having a good time and
Yes.
dancing and
Yes.
having a good time, because that lets me know that, marriage, you just don't cave in, and you're just sitting there on the opposite side of the couch being couch potatoes forever.
Right.
So
Right.
hopefully that becomes infectious, and we continue to pass that down to the body of Christ.
Yes.
So my final question is, for anybody out there that may have suffered church hurt, what do you have to say to
Mm.
them?
For if you suffer from church hurt, just know that you're not alone, and really go to whomever it is, your pastor, somebody in a pew, your ministry leader, whomever it may be, go to them directly. Don't allow it to infiltrate your heart where it tears you up from a place where you know that God has sent you. There are people in churches that are human just like you. They may hold a different title or this big giant title, and you're just a member at the church that doesn't hold a title at all, but you're very important to that particular ministry. And your pastors, if they're not the ones hurting you, hopefully they're not, if they know that that person was uh, 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 mishandling you, I guarantee you 1,000% that they will deal with that individual directly. So don't allow that situation to drive you away from that ministry. You're very much so needed there. I want you to use your voice. Don't be afraid. Don't think that the pastor don't care. Know that he or she does. And speak to that situation. Say, Pastor, I need to have a conversation with such and such because they did X, Y, and Z to me. Oftentimes the pastor do not know. It doesn't even hit the desk. And they're wondering, where's sister such and such or brother such and such? Oh, they left the church. Why? Oh, because of this. And by the time they get to you, you already made your decision. You're done. You don't want to hear from them. You block them. You block the church number. So it's very important. It's very, very important for you to get a understanding, even if you are deciding to leave on a good note, because wherever you may go, you may need say, you know what, I did try around this, that, and other, but this is where I know God has sent me. So leave on a good note if you do have to leave, if it does leave you there, but don't allow it to, and don't, let me say this, don't spread it around the church.
Yes.
A
Yes.
lot of people do that, and that's not making the situation better. Now the pastor has to have this big giant meeting, or have this thing and address the church, and then now it takes him off of the assignment he has to do, which is preach the word, whatever word God has given him or her, and now deal with this matter. So now it's become a distraction, and now the situation that was just between you and this individual now becomes a church-wide situation. And we want to be careful not to minimize when people are being hurt with which people within the ministry. I've seen it 1,000 times, and people be mad. I'm like, I got to talk to you because you're doing X, Y, and Z. Like, what
Mhm.
are you doing? So just know that your pastor or whomever, executive pastor, whoever it is, co-pastor, whomever it is, needs to know. They must know when somebody is mishandling you, mistreating you, it's all kind of stuff going on in churches.
Mhm.
You have to let your leaders know so they can be able to deal with it behind the scenes, and it can keep the ministry flowing. And I think people get caught up in their feelings and emotions, and they make a big scene, and I don't want to say blow it out of proportion, but it causes more harm than good doing that. So um know that you're seen and you're heard, and it's going to be dealt with, and that person is going to be, if it's severe, of course, sit down, removal, whatever it is, whatever steps they have in that particular ministry. And if you see that you told your pastor or leader and that there's nothing done, then you might need to take a step back and see, is this where you need me to be God?
Mhm.
Because I don't believe in going in spaces where people allow abuse or mishandling people
Absolutely.
at all.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
like spaces. I don't like to be mishandled. So if there's a space where they allow that and they tuck things under the rug, that ain't where you need to be. You need to go ahead and run and
Yep.
take that as a sign. Take that as a sign and go ahead and go and find some place that's safe. I think most people feel, and I could say this too. I went to a mega church, and it was a lot of people being mishandled, and the church is so big where the pastor, of course, they may hear just say, okay, you deal with that, you deal with that, you deal with that. And it's really not being dealt with. You see the same people hurting people still in the same position. There's
Mm.
no consequences.
Mhm.
So it may cause you to doubt the church as a whole,
Mhm.
not just that particular ministry. Just like, okay, is this going on everywhere? So you really have to make sure that you're in tune to a ministry that really cares about people, not just about numbers,
Absolutely.
and make sure that where you're going, you're not going because it's a trend, but you're going there because it's what God has sent you. So that's very important too.
Absolutely. Make sure God has sent you and not just going because, it's the trend, it's the name, it's the hype, it's what's popular, you know, or it's the meetup spot so you can
Yes.
meet, your Boaz of Ruth.
Yes.
Thank you,
Oh, you're so
Dominique
welcome.
Haddon. I appreciate you. She is a force, y'all. Dominique, how can we find you?
Oh, don't find me. Just don't find me on social. But I am on Instagram. It's under Domarella. It's like, what is that? Okay, that's just me, Dominique and Cinderella meshed together. So that's
I love
Domarella.
it.
And then and then I'm on Facebook as Dominique Domarella Haddon. So those are my only two social media. I'm on Threads a little bit, but I'm not really on there. But yeah,
Absolutely. If you're in the LA area, Hill
come
City
visit
Church.
us.
Yes, come visit.
Yes.
Get you a word. And I know you're going to get some good singing too. Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Until next time, y'all, we appreciate you all tuning in. Listen to the Black Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds. I'm Nijiama Smalls. Visit us at our website, the Black Girl's Guide to Healing Emotional Wounds.com. Thank you.
Thank you.